The Isle of Jura, the most wild and mountainous of the Southern Hebrides, noted for its geology and particularly its raised beaches, any view of the island such as this from neighbouring Oronsay is dominated by its highest hills, the Paps. At its closest, Jura lies 6 kilometres off the Kintyre Peninsula. The island is 44 kilometres long and at its widest 12 kilometres, but it is almost bisected by Loch Tarbert with its entrance on the west coast and not quite 2k between its head and the Sound of Jura. We're going to sail through the Sound of Islay and anchor in the inner loch, then go by dinghy to the innermost basin known as Top Pool. The Sound of Islay separates Islay from Jura and at its narrowest is just 700 metres wide. The tide runs at up to 5 knots in the narrows, so it has to be favourable, but otherwise the passage is straightforward, as is the entrance to Loch Tarbert. Access to the inner loch is through Cumhain Moor, after passing Glenbatrick and a closer view of Ben Llan and Ben Anoia. All around are the raised beaches which are such a distinctive feature of Jura. These were formed 10,000 years ago when the land had been forced down by the weight of the ice sheet. Since then, Britain has tilted back and the beaches are now 20 metres above sea level. Once through Cumhain Moor, the inner loch opens up and we head for an anchorage near Crib Lodge, below the hill of that name.
Rhoda is at anchor on a loch in Jura. Lindsay, how would you describe exactly where we are?
Well, we're on West Loch Tarbert on Jura, which for me is one of the classic anchorages on the west coast of Scotland. It's totally safe in almost all conditions. It's quiet, it's remote, and it's very beautiful.
What is a tarbert exactly?
Well, Tarbert, I believe, is all to do with the Vikings, and they used to be able to drag their ships from one side of the land to another. And Jura is nearly cut in two by the loch we're on, and that's why it's called a tarbert. Well, there are 3 parts to this loch. We came into the outer loch and then through a narrow channel into the inner loch, and later we're going up into what is called the Top Pool, which is really the 3rd loch, and it's right at the head of the loch. And it appears to be a river, but actually it's a tidal channel.
And what do you think we will actually see as we travel?
We're going to be going up a narrow channel, which is cliffs on both sides to some extent. We're going up between rocks, and there should be quite a tide running. We've got to be very careful to get the tidal calculations right, because I think the tide runs at up to 8 knots in places, and our little outboard can't cope with that.
We aim to reach Top Pool just before high water, so the last of a flood tide will help us on our way, and the start of the ebb, here visible on the surface of the inner loch, will help us back. As we enter Cumhain Beg, the channel narrows, then opens up, and with a glance back at the upper loch, we turn north.
So although we have a wide channel, we have to move from side to side to avoid the rocks.
In a dinghy drawing 1/2 metre and at high water, the chances of hitting any obstructions are slight. Nonetheless, we use the 6 sets of leading marks which have been put in place to help larger vessels stay in the deepest part of a channel. From Rhoda to the buoy in Top Pool is about 3 kilometres.
Our trusty helmsman and skipper, who's brought us safely to our destination and deserves a tip.
The question is whether I can get you back.
Oh gosh. The waters calm down as we go between two islands. We're in the lee of one of them.
Passing the last of the leading lines, Top Pool opens up and, overlooked by Crub, we pick up a mooring. And tied up, there is a real sense of the peace and isolation of this place. But tide waits for nobody, so after a few minutes we slip our mooring and head back into the channel, spotting this dike which looks just like a wall. The intruding harder rock has eroded more slowly, leaving it proud.
We are now just coming round the headland and the loch will be coming into view shortly.
As the tide turns, Cumhainbeg is eerily smooth as Rhoda comes into view across the loch. After dinner on deck, the evening gives us another stunning sunset, and all is silent apart from the birds and the seals.